Hello, everyone. Ron Callis here with One Firefly and Automation Unplugged. Thanks again for joining us today. It is 12:30 on Wednesday, June 21st. Thank you very much for joining us today, taking a few minutes out of your busy schedule. Or maybe you're sitting there eating your lunch and you have us running in the background. But regardless, thank you very much. We've got a fun guest today. We've got Mike Maniscalco from Ihiji. He's a VP of product for that fast-growing technology company based in Texas. Before we get to Mike, I'm actually going to look over here, as I always do, and make sure that our Facebook stream is running. For those of you that have tried to play around with Facebook live streaming, you know it can be tricky, and it's always a good idea to make sure everything's working. Yep, looks like we are good. So we're gonna jump right over, and we are gonna say hi to Mike. How's it going, Mike?
Good. I just did the same thing. I looked at our smiling faces on Facebook. It's the first time I've done the Facebook Live, so kind of excited.
It's kind of surreal, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely cool to see ourselves.
Yes. So certainly, Mike, don't mind if you don't mind, share that feed, and my team will be doing the same. And we're going to ask all of those watching to also make sure you share this content so that your friends in the AV and security space will have a chance to see this content show up in their news feed. Also, we're going to do our best as we go along to ask you guys and gals questions. And we'd love to get your feedback. So real-time feedback. If you have any questions for Mike as we go, you certainly can pose those questions in the comments, and we'll try to do our best to make sure that there are real-time responses and answers to those questions. But Mike, let's go ahead and jump right into it. We're going to try to keep this to approximately around 30 minutes, and if things are getting hot and heavy and we need to go longer, then we'll go longer, but we'll try to keep it short and sweet for the audience. Mike, can you give a little bit of background to my audience in terms of your background in the audio-video industry? Kind of how'd you land in this space, and how did that come about?
Yeah, we kind of took a non-traditional route into the space. Where do I start? So, because the best place to start is start at the beginning. Back in college, we did a project with Bell South that was a kind of home of the future. It was part of an R&D initiative that Bell South had going with emerging technologies, mainly around home networking technologies. But with that, there was voice over IP, there was video over IP, there was a home theater involved in the project. There was you could order like products right from not a handheld smartphone, but literally they had a prototype touchscreen desktop phone where you could order Domino's and things. Anyway, a bunch of fun stuff. I'm a tech geek, obviously. So we did this project, and we talked to the guy that was doing it, and he did home theater systems. And I didn't realize there's actually a career opportunity there. That's pretty interesting. Anyway, we did the project, went on, graduated, went on to the real world, got some real jobs doing software engineering, network management, network engineering, things along those lines. Quickly kind of grew interested in doing something other than the corporate world. So came together with Stuart, who's the co-founder here. We had known each other through Bell South and through college. And we said, okay, let's start a business. What about that home automation thing that we did a few years back? That seems pretty interesting. So started researching the industry, got pretty interested in it, got a job, found that it was actually something we really enjoyed doing, and then decided to start our own business. So we started a business that right in your backyard in the Palm Beach market of Florida, doing larger scale integration systems. And we were kind of pushing the envelope of what you could do with IP. And coming from the IT background, we knew what networks were designed to do, how they were designed to be scalable, reliable, fast, and efficient. RS-232 seemed dated, and we started pushing the envelope. Obviously, there were some lessons learned, as a lot of people did, in doing early automation systems on IP. But as part of those pain points that we were experiencing, our customers were experiencing, we developed solutions to monitor all the IP devices and the networks for our clients.
What was the time frame of that business, if you don't mind? Sorry to interrupt, but just to give this perspective and Computers had been invented by that point, right?
Yeah. So the timeline, is that what you were asking?
Yeah, the timeline in terms of, sorry, you don't get a visual here, but the timeline of when you started your integration business. So you both had careers out in kind of corporate America, and then you decided to jump into the integration space, running an integration firm. What were the years that you were doing that?
Yeah, so we started the integration company in 2005, 2006 time period. So we started then, and then ran that for about 4 or 5 years before we sold that business.
So for perspective, what were you doing in that firm? What sort of technologies were you using? What sort of solutions were you regularly installing?
So we were doing whole home automation systems, everything from audio, video to lighting control, home theaters. The standards that the integrators are doing out there. We were doing control systems. We were foolish enough to dabble in Crestron control. Control 4 wasn't actually quite around at the time. Crestron, Savant, we dabbled in, and AMX, with AMX kind of being our primary system, but we were trying to juggle all three. Which, as most of you know, is difficult. They're very different, and very capable of very different solutions. So, large-scale home automation systems, we had a pretty good SMB, like commercial-grade network backhaul for all the systems there. And, a lot of it's about support, especially in the Palm Beach market, where your customers, they want that level of support, and they need somebody there to be able to take care of them.
How did the experiences you and Stuart gained as integrators in the Palm Beach market, how did that then lend itself to your next natural step being, I think the next step was starting Ihiji, if I'm correct?
Yeah, so the experience was pretty typical. I think almost anybody who's in our business has these stories where you were just getting constant phone calls, nights, weekends, holidays, because something was broken. And it wasn't necessarily your fault. Sometimes the ISP had issues. Sometimes the user had issues themselves. Sometimes the systems that you installed had problems. But with all the complexity, there seemed to be constant firefighting. And it got a little bit exhausting pretty quickly about having to fight all these fires on a constant 24/7 basis. So what we did was we developed our monitoring solution for our own use. Honestly, it wasn't really a product we were looking to commercialize, to help us be more proactive in servicing our customers and help us deliver more service to them remotely, so that we didn't have to drop everything, hop in a truck, and drive down to that client site just to troubleshoot and resolve their issues. So it really set the stage for Ihiji and what we did today, and it allowed us to create a recurring revenue stream within that business through service contracts. And ultimately, I think the service contracts gave us some value when we went to exit that business. So it's kind of a natural progression. When we sold that business and spun the technology out into Ihiji, it really was, well, the industry as a whole has these exact same problems, exact same headaches, exact same challenges. Why don't we try to help the industry with those issues?
Can you provide a little more detail around the fact that you started and ran and then were successful in selling your integration business all in a rather short period of time? That concept of selling one's business in the integration space is generally a bit of a nebulous goal, and people, although they might desire being able to do that, don't exactly know how to go about that. So you did that in a very short period of time, and you said that securing maintenance agreements or service contracts was one of the keys to increasing your value and making that asset worth something. Can you provide a little more color to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what we realized quickly is we were trying to run two businesses that were both fairly young and had a lot of growth potential. But our ability as a small company on both sides of the coin, on both Ihiji and InvoStar was the name of the business, our ability to do what we wanted on either of those with the small team and the limited resources was handicapped because we were trying to do both. So we couldn't do either as well as we'd like. So we kind of looked at the scenario and said, okay, well, what are our options here? And I think we're pretty analytical folks, Stuart and I, and David, who was involved at the time as well. We said, well, let's evaluate the opportunities and make a decision, and we did. And we said, Ihiji really, it caters to our background of software engineering and networking and things like that. It is a bigger opportunity than InvoStar at the end of the day, because it is a global market that we can tackle without having to have boots on the ground in every one of those markets. It was a recurring revenue business model, which we really, obviously, as we preach to dealers every day, really like. So at that point, we said, okay, well, what should we do with InvoStar? We've got customers who are actually committed to us. They're paying us annually to provide service. We just don't want to drop everything, right? That's not really the goal. We had built something of value. We said, well, maybe there are others in this market or in this industry who find value in what we've created. And we started talking to some people, and we brainstormed. And at the end of the day, what we ended up selling was to an electrical contractor. And that contractor not only had an electrical firm, but he had a low voltage wiring firm, and he had an alarm and fire alarm business. So he's looking to diversify and continue to grow, and said, this is natural. I can leverage your brands and the brands you're licensed to sell, like the Lutrons and the Crushtrons of the world. I can expand my business by capturing more contracts with each home that we do, and kind of went into conversations with him and a few others, and ultimately came to terms on a deal. We did it quickly, absolutely, because we were also trying to get Ihiji and get that going as quickly as possible. We had a product which we had developed at that point, was ready to sell. So it was interesting that the thing we learned is that it never happens as quickly as you'd like. It took us months to close the deal, to the point where we had already made plans to start Ihiji. We had an office and a lease lined up in Austin. Like we said, okay, well, clearly this isn't going to take more than X months. I don't remember what the time frame was, but 6 months. So we made plans. We got a lease out here. We had made living arrangements out here, thinking the deal had been closed, so we could make a nice, clean transition. It literally went down to the day that the moving trucks were packed. We were in the lawyer's office and closed, having packed a moving van, signing legal documents with the new business. And that same afternoon, we hit the road to Orlando, to EHX, when they used to host that in Orlando, and launched Ihiji the next day publicly at our booth. And 2 days later, after that, we packed our cars back up and literally had all our IP phones and the servers and everything in our cars, and continued driving out to Austin. Hit the ground Monday morning in Austin, and we're up and running. So it was a whirlwind for sure.
Oh, that's an awesome story. I'm sure a lot of our audience can relate. I am curious, and I'd love folks to post if you have intentions. If you're a business owner, do you have intentions or any sort of focus on selling your business? And if so, tell us that. And if you do not have intentions to sell your business, say, hey, I work for somebody, I don't own the business. Let us know that. I'd love to hear feedback from you folks, so I can share that with our audience. Steven just commented, Mike. He said, this is Steven Stetson. He says, such a great story. So I can tell you, I've been in the space, maybe a little bit longer than you guys, since back in 2000. And you don't hear that many stories of integrators successfully packaging their company up and selling it and being proud about that experience. I think there's a lot of room for improvement industry-wide for that success story to be shared. But on to Ihiji. And guys, keep commenting and posting. Love to hear from you. And again, want to hear from you if you've had any intentions of trying to sell your business, or down the road you want to sell your business, and give us as much detail as you can. But let's talk about Ihiji. First of all, where did this name come from?
So, side note is we're kind of getting ready for CEDIA, and we've got some exciting product stuff going, and are having to name this new product. And I think I've proven one thing, that I can come up with some wild and crazy company names. The name, after we came up with the name, our PR firm said, you know what, you guys have to have a better story for where you came up with this name. So we developed some acronym, which I think I'm the only one on the planet that still knows, and it wasn't the best, so we abandoned that. At the end of the day, it really doesn't have a meaning. we have the kind of the mythical Mr. Ihiji character, and we've kind of played it, made a fun brand with it. But the honest answer is had a bunch of names, wrote a bunch of them on the back of a cocktail napkin at a happy hour at a sushi restaurant. Obviously, I think the Ihiji name has a little bit of there was iTunes and iPod was big at the time. Fiji was the thing we liked. The domain name was available. That's a big decision. So we said, you know what, we like it. It's kind of Web 2.0 was the hot thing at the time. So people were coming up with crazy names. We said, well, let's do it. Let's go with it. And we've kind of run with it since then.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that answer. I knew there was a ninja and some ninja swords involved.
Yeah, we just had fun with it at this point. It's like we might as well embrace it. So I'd like to say in a future career I could become a consultant on how not to name a company, because you pick up the phone and say I'm calling from Ihiji and they're like, what?
What? How do you spell that? Okay. So what are your day-to-day duties? You said you have a partner, Stuart Wrench, I believe.
Right.
And what are your day-to-day duties within Ihiji?
Yeah, I mean, we're still a small company compared to a lot of the industry. I generally, on a day-to-day basis, handle a lot of the product strategy, product decisions. Some of the newer things we're working on, I tend to play with. And also, I head up most of our marketing efforts on this at this point. So we dabble in sales. I try to stay away from sales, but I end up helping quite a bit there. I don't program as much anymore. The programmers don't like it when I touch code. But generally product and marketing is where I spend a lot of my time.
Got it. Now, you guys decided to base your business in Austin, and you had just mentioned that previously you were running your integration firm out of Palm Beach, Florida. Are you guys from Austin? Is that why you landed there? Or what were the reasons or considerations that you chose to move across the country and park your business in Texas?
Yeah, there's actually a good story here as well, and I'll share it because I do like this story. And when we sold the business, before we were even thinking of moving, we knew we were doing Ihiji. In fact, the guy that helped us with our initial user design has been commenting on the video too.
Cool.
We said, okay, well, we need to hire some developers, and we did. And we hired our first developer. His name's Varun, and we hired him out of the University of Florida. And it took us a few months. It took us a lot longer than we thought it would to hire that individual. And Varun had a lot of talents, but he had a master's degree. Generally, he was more than qualified for the position we were needing. And we said, that was a lot of work. We also had at the end of the day, we ended up having to work out some visa issues, and no big deal, but it was in no way scalable. And Stuart especially has a mindset where he thinks scalability. It is one of those core things that he thinks about. And we looked at each other and said, you know what, if we're going to have to hire dozens more developers over the lifetime of our business, is this the right market to do it in? Palm Beach is a great market for integration. Obviously, there's a great demographic for that. I was actually from Florida. I grew up in Jupiter, so a lot of my family was there. I love the beach. But it wasn't necessarily the right place to get a startup off the ground. So we were looking at other cities. I had ties, or Stuart and I both had ties to Atlanta through Georgia Tech, so we talked to the incubator at Georgia Tech. My wife was at UNC in Chapel Hill, so we talked to some of the folks up there in the tech community. We looked at Boston, we looked at places like that, but neither of us particularly liked the cold. Stuart was from Texas and said, hey, Austin's great. There's a strong startup community there. So we took a trip out here, talked to the Chamber of Commerce, talked to the University of Texas, their technology incubator out here. Really liked the experience out here. It was a great startup environment. The cost of business in Texas was wonderful compared to Silicon Valley. And when we got accepted to the Austin Technology Incubator at UT, that kind of tilted the scales in the favor of Austin, and we decided that this was the place we wanted to start the business.
What are some of the benefits of being in an incubator? I've heard of incubators happening all over the country. I've heard references to Austin being called, the second Silicon Valley. What is it in an incubator environment that helps foster a new business?
There are a lot of benefits, especially for an early stage startup. The first is just the physical things. You get turnkey office space. Your leases are pretty flexible. The cost is pretty reasonable. So there's that piece, and they sold that. Just show up and plug in. You'll have network. You have everything you need. You have power. You don't have to worry about getting permits to operate or renovations on your lease. All the things that you've experienced, and I'm sure others have when they started a business in a physical facility. Yeah. So that made a lot of sense. A lot of what the co-working facilities provide today. But an incubator is usually more than that. You get access to resources, advisor resources, so they have a strong network. And leveraging the network was important too. In Florida, we had a pretty strong network from our involvement and just relationships down there. But in Austin, neither of us really had a good network here. So the incubator served as an instant extension of our own network and allowed us to get out into the community and find advisors, find early investors, and things like that. So they made connections to those types of people. And then you're surrounded by others that are going through similar experiences. Starting a company, having other people you can talk to, even about their technology that they're using. Say, what do you guys develop? And what languages, what challenges do you have? Or we're having this technical challenge or this business challenge. So there are a lot of benefits to the incubator programs.
Okay. No, I appreciate that background for those of us out there in the audience that haven't heard of that or weren't familiar with that. I'm sure that was enlightening. Folks out there watching, and Taylor Whipple says, and they have good barbecue.
Yeah, Austin's got amazing barbecue. I lived in the South, obviously, had plenty of barbecue in Atlanta. Lived in Kansas City for a year. They had fantastic. I didn't think it could get better than Oklahoma Joe's, and then I moved to Austin, and there are a dozen places that could compete with some of the best barbecue in the country. So.
And you have Ray Allen says, "What's up, Ihiji?" Do you know Ray Allen? All right. So, hey Ray, how's it going, bud? Thanks for watching.
Yeah, thanks.
I like big mugs. I guess that's a beer. I'm not even going to touch that.
That's a great beer community too. We're beer nerds here at Ihiji.
Beer nerds? Okay.
Oh yeah.
All right. Mike, you've been in the networking space, it sounds like, from the very beginning of your career. And you're very intimately in the networking space now and providing monitoring technologies for integrators to monitor networks in their clients' projects and homes. How have you seen the networking marketplace change? And I know it's maybe a big question, and where do you see it going?
Yeah, it's a big question because I think initially when we started in the industry, IP was a dirty word because there are a lot of bad experiences. I think one of the challenges with IP, if you haven't done the implementation of it, there are a lot of places where you can run into struggles, both on the implementation, but also when the manufacturer integrates the Ethernet card into their equipment. So people went through some pain points and struggles as the industry transitioned. But at this point, it's transitioned to a very reliable way of communicating and delivering content. It's the backbone of all the systems. And we believe that. Going back to when we had our InvoStar company running, I had volunteered for the CEDIA Technology Council because we were doing a lot of Cisco systems, voice over IP systems. And I said, why isn't the industry adopting IP, and what can we do to help move it forward? And talked to Dave Pedigo and Gordon Van Zuyden on the phone one day, and next thing you knew, I was participating in the Tech Council, trying to help the industry figure out where the network was going and how was it going to impact the industry. So a lot's changed over those probably close to 10 years, where it is now probably the most critical system in the house. I mean, it just is. It's the third or fourth most important utility in the home now. So it's been really interesting to watch how quickly that's changed. We've tried to do a lot of help with the industry to move things forward because there's a lot of new education that needs to be learned and things along those lines. So been very involved with CEDIA from an education standpoint, created some of the courses with networking. I teach a lot of their boot camps. I do a lot of instruction at CEDIA Expo because obviously at this point it's not going away. It's going to become more important for integrators as time goes on.
Now, I'm looking at the clock. I have so many things I want to go down a deeper dive regarding CEDIA and training, but I think that might have to be in a version 2.0 of our interview. I'm watching the clock here, and I want to make sure I get in some more questions regarding Ihiji. So specifically, the recurring revenue model that helped you ultimately have a higher valuation at InvoStar and sell that business. Your company has been a big advocate of integrators getting better at this by writing contracts and helping them understand how to contract it, trying to help them how to market and sell it, certainly giving them the technology behind the scenes that helps them ultimately have the ability to monitor that. Can you just maybe in the simplest way you could describe the basics of how you see an RMR service-based model working for an integrator? What do they need to do to be in that business?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, there's not a lot that the dealer needs to do to be in the business other than make the commitment. I think that most integrators out there are so busy that finding the time to actually sit down and do it and make the commitment is one of the biggest hurdles, because once they do that, the resources are there, the templates are there, we've got everything under the sun that they need to get going. The software is there to support it all. We built our service manager tool to help them keep up with all the billings and the back-end operations side of things. We even have marketing programs that we're working on with companies like yours to help them find even more success with RMR. So really, I think the biggest thing is commitment. Where
do you see the biggest hurdles right now? I mean, one thing I know, you're a hard worker. You're out there traveling the country. You're always at some event training on not necessarily topics that are Ihiji, but rather general and broad around networking design, how to build an RMR business and such. And so first of all, thank you for doing that. That's a big contribution to the industry that often can be thankless. So this is my small way of saying thank you for going out there and doing that. And the people watching this show now also know that, and hopefully they drop you some thank yous as well. What do you see as the biggest barrier or reason that integrators are not seeing success growing an RMR business? And for those of you that don't know RMR, it's recurring monthly revenue, typically around dealers contracting their customer base for maintenance contracts or service plans.
I think once you make the commitment, the biggest hurdle is the sales side. Getting a sales team trained, getting them comfortable selling something new that's not a projector, not something they're traditionally selling. There's some barriers there, and I think really the best place for integrators to find fast success is through a marketing engine of some sort. But a lot of integrators haven't ever had to think of a marketing engine because their business was project-based, and those projects always came through referrals. And recurring revenue is a little bit different because you're trying to mine an existing customer base. So marketing, I think, of the plans more than sales is where dealers can probably find the best chance of success once they make that commitment. And again, that's something we're working with dealers every single day to help them with.
Got it. So you're thinking that if they have a customer base, they've sold, and those customers have trusted them with their installations and have paid them for that work, and so dealers have maybe hundreds, in some cases thousands of past customers, and so it's really a matter of then designing and executing the strategies to go back to that customer base, perhaps putting a smart appliance in that home that lets the integrator have intelligence about what's working and what isn't working, and then selling the customer on the benefits of that dealer being able to preemptively know those problems and then roll trucks to go out there and solve issues, perhaps before the customer even knows they exist.
Yeah, I mean that's the value prop, right? We are going to take care of your systems. We are going to be the trusted technology partner, so that when you have problems, we're here to help. And we do that through our proactive maintenance and support. We do that through our remote monitoring and diagnostics capabilities, and it all comes at a very attractive price. And the interesting thing is that it's been proven over and over and over that it works and the customers want it. I don't think there's any question about that. In fact, when an integrator makes a big push in any given market, when one integrator makes a big move, we see 3 or 4 integrators within a month start following, because all of a sudden customers are asking for it because somebody else in the market is talking about it. So it just, to me, that's just proof that there's plenty of demand. It's just a matter of capitalizing on it.
Can you give any general numbers around what it means for a business if they have, say, recurring revenue? And I'm talking in terms of a valuation or what it means to a potential buyer versus a business that maybe is very successfully selling projects, has a steady history of hitting certain revenue numbers, assuming certain levels of profitability, but say has no recurring revenue and it's all project-based sales. What does it mean? I would think that would help people understand why they should at least try to figure it out.
Having run a project-based business, I think I know your business is only as strong as your next contract, right? As the next project you bring on.
Right.
So there's always that level of unpredictability. Recurring revenue not only brings consistent cash flow into the business, but it also starts to build value. And I think if you've got a services business that doesn't have recurring revenue, you're lucky to get 1x your trailing revenue, like your last year's revenue, right? In a recurring revenue business, if you look at parallels for like the security industry, those multiples are 3 to 5x annual revenues or 30 plus x monthly revenues, depending on how they're billing out that revenue. So it's literally hundreds of % increase to the value of your business. And even if you don't plan on selling your business in the near term, that cash flow is undeniable. It means that you can pay your employees every month because you've got that predictable cash flow coming in without any concerns. You can sleep better knowing it. You can take a vacation and realize that if a project doesn't come through in that 2-week period while you're out of the office, things will be okay. It lets you have something that's lendable if you want to buy a business or buy another business or buy a building. And if you do want to go into mergers and acquisitions, it's going to help you sell your business, or it's going to give you leverage in the company that you're trying to merge with. So, the value of RMR is undeniable. I think the good news is we have to spend a lot less time preaching that these days, and it's a lot more about, okay, now how do you actually do it?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assumption. That said, you have been standing on a soapbox for the last 6 or 7 years, it seems like, trying to spread that message, and maybe what you're seeing are some of the fruits of that labor, and the marketplace certainly seems to be listening. I hear the concept of maintenance or service contracts. I don't think a week goes by that somebody doesn't talk to me about that and how to drive that. So we're seeing it from this end here at One Firefly. I'm looking at the Facebook feed, and we are running already a couple of minutes over, so I'm going to just ask 1 or 2 more questions, and we'll get you out of here, Mike, and back to your day of designing awesome products. But Ray did comment. He says he uses the Ihiji dashboard in his service department to proactively fix issues. He says he also includes the appliance as part of our maintenance program. Can you talk just for a moment about what the mechanics are? What are when he says the appliance and the dashboard? I also know there's something else called Service Manager. What does the landscape look like within Ihiji in terms of the products and software?
The quick overview is we have 2 main products. We have our Ihiji Envision remote monitoring and management product. Remote systems management is kind of the new term that the industry has put behind that. And that does all of the remote monitoring, alerting, diagnostics, inventory of all the devices, identification of the devices, remote access for support. So that's Envision. To make that happen in a secure manner, we have an appliance. And the appliance is just a small hardware component you put on the client side. And that allows us to collect all the information behind a firewall without having to kind of penetrate the dealer's network from the outside. So it keeps their systems more secure. So the appliance is required to be on site. That's just an enabler for the software. At that point, the dealer does everything from our dashboard or from our cloud interface, or they're from the mobile phone, where they can access all their systems. So that's Envision, and it's really the tool to deliver the service. And then we've got another tool called Service Manager, which we launched at CEDIA almost 2 years ago. We run the Best New Product Award, and Service Manager is about the operations side of the service business. It's about creating better customer experiences. We like to think about it as creating customers for life. It allows you to do that. It helps you track all of your warranties, all of your service plans, does all the recurring billing and invoicing for your customers. That money is deposited in your bank account. It gives you a nice client-facing portal where you can advertise your service plans to the outside world and collect payments securely from your customers. And it also has a help desk and ticketing solution built into it. So those are our two products. The little sneak peek is, we're at CEDIA, those two products are starting to converge a little more into a new reimagined kind of experience for the service and operations side of your business.
And those two products being Service Manager and Envision?
Yes, Service Manager and Envision will kind of come together in a union or a marriage of sorts.
Okay, so that's part of what will be unveiled or perhaps teased on at CEDIA.
Yeah, you'll start to see over the next few weeks to months more and more details on that. Since it's a project we've been working on for quite some time.
Now, the last question I'd like to ask is, if someone, let's say the integrator figures out the marketing piece. So perhaps they're either getting very effective at selling it at the point of sale when they sell the system, they sell the service plan, it's all part of the sale. And I've heard cases or use cases where some dealers have gotten very good at that and their take rate is very high. Alternatively, let's make an assumption that they are effectively going back to their book of business and marketing and getting interest, getting clients coming on board saying, yes, I'd like to add this capability to my system. How long does it typically take for an integrator to get ramped up? So let's say you're at CEDIA. Hopefully, maybe it happens right after this Facebook Live. But someone knocks on your door, and you already said you don't want to handle sales, Mike, so they talk to your sales team, and the sales team take good care of them, and they sign a contract, and they come on board. How long does it take them to get ramped up and maybe be successful, if I'd be so bold? How long does that take?
It shouldn't take long. Everything's there. I literally have had dealers, and this is going back years, so who we've given the templates to, and they'd call the next day and say, hey, I just sold one. So it shouldn't take a lot of work. I think if you really want it depends on how you define success. But we have templates that you can put into your email marketing system and send out the next day and convert. So it really doesn't take a lot of time. It's more about, well, let's understand your customers, your goals. Let's make sure you're happy with all the materials we have in place. You don't need any tweaks, and then let's get it done. And I like to say the faster you can move on the recurring revenue, the better off you are, because that recurring revenue compounds. So I encourage people to move quickly.
Mike, do you have any closing remarks for our audience? Speak now or forever hold your peace, as my mom used to say.
No, I think a lot of the audience out there we see on the road at all the events, at ProSource and ASEAN and HTSA and the tech summits and CEDIA. So we're pretty accessible. If you do have follow-on questions, we're here to help. That's one of the things we really go out of our way to do, is provide all the resources and access you need to help be successful. We want to see this industry successful, which is why we created our Race for RMR, where we're trying to incentivize dealers to get out there and get RMR in place before CEDIA Expo. We really want to see how far we can move the entire industry as a whole. So don't have much else to add other than I appreciate everybody's time. I know that everybody's busy out there today, so taking the time to tune in is appreciated. And I look forward to seeing everybody in San Diego. Awesome.
Thank you, Mike, and thanks, Mike, for being such a great guest and working with me before we got started and getting the tech working and cooperating. And you were very patient. You made for a great guest with great feedback to my questions. So thank you very much, sir.
Appreciate you having us on.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. And guys and gals, thank you again for joining me for another episode of Automation Unplugged. It is my pleasure to be here and interview some of our industry's best and brightest. And hopefully we all learn a few things. I know that I always do every week as I interview the talent that makes up our industry. So thank you again for joining us. Have a great rest of your day, a great week. And remember, the decision is yours to have a great day and a great week, regardless of what happens to you. So make it a great day, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much, guys.